Today's class is continuing our discussion in Nesias Kapayim, the laws of the raising of the hands. Specifically, the Kohanim raise their hands to engage in blessing the Jewish people. And we learned last week that the blessing is a mitzvah that only the Kohanim can perform, and that they should engage in the mitzvah correctly, accurately, explicitly for the purpose of blessing the Jewish people. And so today we're going to pick up with Seif Dalid, with halacha number 4 here in Siman 128. And so, as we said last time, that you really need to do the blessing and only have to do it once a day. However, let's say you don't want to do it. So now we're saying, let's say the Kohanim don't want to do the blessing. They don't want to do the priestly blessing. Okay, we'll get to why in a moment. Let's just say they don't want to do it and what the parameters are. We'll get to that in a moment. They do not need to wait outside of the shul after they don't need to wait outside the shul after they are called to duchen. Okay, so there's an announcement. Kohanim, all right. This is after the blessing of Ritzei, and then they read this whole thing. If they don't want to do it, they don't have to stand outside. So they only need to be outside when they make the call. And you need to be outside for that, so that way people don't say, "Oh, he's not really a Kohen; he's a broken Kohen." Okay, so our custom is to not come back into the shul until after the bracha has been completed. So you go outside before the call and stay outside during the whole thing. That way people will know there's something else wrong. So what's wrong, the Mishnah Berurah wants to explain? They're sick, something like that. Okay? So that's what happens. All right. Yeah, you had a bad Berurah the night before. It's punishing you the next day. Maybe you can't even daven straight. Can't even keep your tefillin on, right? Definitely can't do duchening. For whatever reason, not feeling good. Then he says, take a look at the Magen Avraham. And he quotes the Mordechai. So the point where you're supposed to leave out, according to the custom, is before they start the bracha of say. Okay? Why? Because that's where the concern is that people are going to say they are not a real Kohen. So therefore they should leave at Ritzei. And the Leviim who are out there to pour the water on their hands, they shouldn't follow them out. Okay? That's why they should leave at that point. Okay, so that's part of it. So the that whole thing, you need to avoid that. The poskim further write that the people who are puzzle, the people who are unfit for duchening, even if that exemption or that restriction is only a rabbinic one, they do not need to leave before it's said. Okay, because people will know that's why they can't go up. So it's not, so when they're called up, if you are unfit to serve, you are not part of the call, so you don't have to leave. Okay? Because then there's no issue of thinking you're no good. We know you're no good. And they also seem to have a consensus about the following as well. If they tell you, they tell you to go up, or all the Kohanim in there are unfit. So where it sounds like the call of the leader of the congregation, of the Shliach Tzibur, sounds like he's summoning them, even though they all know that they are unfit to provide the blessing. They still don't need to go up, and they don't violate this commandment to go up when summoned, as we mentioned. Why? Because it's not them; it's something else that the rabbis placed on them. Okay. And the rabbis can make those rules. No, you can't make a duchening, right? So we'll learn about those issues in a minute. Nonetheless, if there are no other good Kohanim, just these broken ones, right? The rabbinically restricted ones. So one opinion, the opinion of the Aliyah Rabbah, says that they actually should step out, and Rabbi Kiva Eger seems to agree with him. Okay. So the Mishnah Berurah explains that they only need to be outside for when they are being called, Okay, which is to say, there's no obligation when they're outside while the call is being initiated. Okay, and that's what we said in Sif Bays earlier. Okay, and they would be unfit. So who are the unfit ones that we're referring to over here? Specifically, the ones the Torah enumerates. Their mother was a divorcee, or their mother was a chalutza, which means that she was rejected from being a yevama, meaning that she went and married a kohen after her husband died, and the brother was supposed to take the wife to have the child. The whole yibum thing. All right, so those things are no good. All right, now some of the rules. Okay, halacha hey. The Kohanim may not ascend the duchan, meaning the area in front of the aron, wearing shoes. Okay, they may only wear their stockings or their socks. Okay, and some people say that they should remove the socks if the socks are made of leather. However, in some places they're leaning on this. Mishnah says you can't go up to duchan in shoes. Why? Because maybe what will happen is that your shoelace will break, and that is really humiliating, and that's just unacceptable. And people will say, hey, he's Mr. Broken Shoe, or Mr. Falling Off Shoe. And then he's going to focus on tying his shoes while everyone else is trying to say the blessing. And that's not cool. That's not appropriate to do. And then people are going to say, oh, the reason why he's not doing the blessing is because he is from the not good parties, right? His mother was a divorcee, right? And he's not fit to be Kohen. Therefore, that's why he is Mr. Walking Away, okay? Even if you don't have any shoelaces on them, this rule or law still applies because they didn't make a distinction. And when you are going up, you should take the shoes off and hide them somewhere that people shouldn't see them around the shul, because that would be undignified. And so you should take them off. You take them off before you wash your hands. However, if you can take them off without touching them after you've washed your hands, and you won't have to touch them at all, that's okay as well. So you can kick them off. They're like loafers. So we say that types of socks are okay. So what are these? There are another type of shoe that are really long, and they come all the way up to the calf, or even up as high to the thigh. Okay. So they're very high, almost all the way to the point where it reaches the thigh, or the they reach up to above the knee. Okay, because those are not considered the shoes that we were worried about. Okay, so sometimes you get people who are making straps for these type of things, and they strap all the way up to the thigh. Nonetheless, we're not worried about you being distracted to tie them up. And so even if they are permitted, there's not as big a distraction as is with shoes. So if they are made from leather, we said that's another thing. That the reason why is because that looks more like a sandal, like the leather sandal. And the rabbis didn't make a distinction on that. Okay, whether there were straps on it or not. Nonetheless, when it comes to these longer sock type things or stocking type things, and especially if they have you have some type of pant hovering over it, so they're gonna come all the way up to the hip. So that seems to be even better. Okay, so if they're like a long leg stocking type thing, because that's definitely not what they were referring to. Okay, and so too, if they were made out of fabric. Okay, and so the Ramah adds that we don't do this. Some people are lenient about this. Nonetheless, the things that we're talking about are something else. So, which is that the type of pants that we're talking about, which are a little bit different. Okay, they're a type of long stocking. And you wear them. Sometimes they're worn over the pants, and they keep the mud off. So that those type of things are not appropriate to wear. Okay, and based on that, things too that are made out of rubber, like rubber galoshes. Okay, and they're called something else in Yiddish. They're called chalasin. They're probably referring to the galoshes that we call galoshes. So he says those are also not appropriate to wear, even though they're not really shoes. The later deciders also write that it's not appropriate to come up to the duchan with bare feet, okay, because that's even more distracting. Okay, and especially people nowadays, people at the very least will wear socks, and they don't walk around so much without socks on. So therefore, they should at least keep their socks on, and that's also the custom. Although he is writing that for Europe. Nowadays, there are a number of people who walk around in sandals and other such places in warmer places, so it's not that big a deal for them to take their shoes off. So, but if you were in a place where that wasn't the custom, it would be inappropriate. So depending on where you are, he doesn't say that. I'm just telling you, it's more of a. He's talking about Europe. So since there's no prohibition in the Shulchan Aruch, he's not referring to a place like Israel where it's much warmer. Okay, halacha vav over here. Even though the Kohanim have washed their hands in the morning, they must wash their hands again when they up to their wrist when they are coming to duchan. And up to the wrist means the space where the hand attaches to the arm, and that little bit of the arm as well. And the Levi pours the water all over their hands. Okay, and that Levi should also wash his hands before he washes the Kohen's hands. Lots of water. Okay. Okay, it says, however, our custom is that the Levium don't wash their hands a second time. They rely on the Natila they washed in the first thing in the morning. Okay? So the Mishnah Berurah says now they should wash their hands, even if they've already washed their hands one time, because the rabbis related the requirement of washing the hands on the psukim that describe this. Okay? They have to wash their hands. What if they have dirty feet from wearing sandals? Right. Well, we said that they should take their shoes off first, and then they come wash their hands. Okay. Oh, you're saying that their feet might be dirty also. Okay. We'll get back to that. I hear what you're saying now. I misunderstood what you're asking. You're saying that what if their feet are dirty from wearing sandals? They have dirt all over that. Okay. So the first thing is, let's talk about the hands. So they have to wash their hands. Why? Because the verse says, raise up your hands in holiness and bless the people of Hashem. Which is to say, when you raise up hands, wash your hands. Okay? So that's what we're referring to. And then do the blessing. And that's referring to the blessing of the Kohanim, and the washing needs to be done with water only. And you can't use other types of things, like no rocks and no using a shmata. Okay? Which is similar to what we said about the laws of tefillah in Siman Sadi Beis in chapter 92. And even there, we said that the author of the Shulchan Aruch, the Mechaber, says that if you wash your hands for Shacharis, you should go ahead and wash them again before you do the priestly blessing, because the verse itself implies that there was a hand washing specifically with water before this time. Okay, and then we also say that the Kohanim have to wash again, even though they've already washed for the morning service already. If they don't have any water, so later decisors had the following observation: they can go ahead and rely on the opinion of the Rambam, and the Rambam holds that you can rely on the first hand washing you did in the morning, as long as you kept washing your hands the entire time and know that they didn't touch anything. So how do you do that? Davening the whole time, watching your hands. Where do the hands go? Watching where they go. Okay? And then we say you wash your hands all the way to the wrist. Okay? Because that's just like what the Kohanim used to do in temple times. And therefore, the Achreinim all write that you also have to use a utensil to pour the water, a negelvasser. And you also have to use someone pouring it, so it can't come out of the faucet. And you can't have an animal do it, right? You can't train your dog to wash your hands. And that the water can't be different colors, and that have to have at least 4 ounces of water. Okay? And then next halacha that we talk about is the Levi pours the water. Now let's say you don't have a Levi. Okay? So then find a firstborn. Okay, that would be another good thing. If he's a firstborn, make sure he's the firstborn. That he's a firstborn who also had a pidyon of ben. He was the first child born to his mother, first issue of the womb of his mother. That also helps. Okay, because that's what the Levium replaced. If you don't have that, then the Kohen will just wash his hands himself, and some other Jewish person will wash the water over his hands. But don't have a Yisrael do it. Okay, so even though the Levi is a big Talmud Chacham, big Torah scholar, and the Kohen is an total ignoramus. All he knows how to do is say the priestly blessing. So you should in that case you should still be strict, and so too if there's a Kohen who is a Talmud Chacham, okay, that he should go ahead and wash his own hands. Okay, so therefore someone has to wash his hands for him, even though that person himself is a total ignoramus. So we say this is because it's not an honor to the Torah to have a person who is a high-ranking Torah scholar service somebody who's a complete ignoramus. And the Magen Giborim seems to imply that this is correct. Okay, now the Ramah who says that we don't have the Levium wash their hands. So the Mishnah Berurah explains, if the Levium are not paying attention in their hands, then it actually is preferable that they go ahead and wash their hands first, especially if they're going to touch their bodies. So there are some places where the minhag is that they pour the water. They put a little essential oil in the water, something with a flavorful oil in the water. So the Magen Avraham writes here, and in another place, the Taz writes that this is not appropriate to put an extra special spice or flavor or something like that, or scent in the water. Okay, and a number of people who come after them, like the Aliyah Rabbah and the Chacham Tzvi, say that's okay because there's no problem of introducing a scent or a flavor into the water, because this little oil itself is mixed into the water. It's soluble, and so therefore you don't notice it. And if you put it into the water on Erev Shabbos and Erev Yom Tov, that's fine, because really it wasn't the water that was the problem. It was the fact that you're adding a scent into the water Erev Shabbos and Erev Yom Tov, and not because of doing something to the water. Okay, just not they held you weren't allowed to introduce these scents into the water on Shabbos and Yom Tov. Okay, let's see, we're on Halacha Zion. Okay, if the Kohen washed his hands the first thing in the morning, and he says the blessing Al Netilas Yadayim, he may not make another blessing for when he washes his hands for Nesias Kapayim. The Mishnah Berurah explains you don't make it again, because when it comes to making a blessing, we rely on the fact that the Rambam says that first one you've washed is the main one, and so therefore this one is just, a funsies, okay? And this is as long as you didn't get your hands dirty again. Because if you did get your hands dirty again and you weren't paying attention to your hands, then even the Rambam himself would agree that you went and you stuck your hands down your shirt, or you went to the bathroom, then you have to make another bracha on this. And that is the opinion of the Magen Avraham. Okay? The Aliyah Rabbah writes that you never will ever have to say the blessing on this washing, because maybe they never made a rule to require you to say a bracha on washing your hands for Nesias Kapayim. And that's our minhag. We don't say a blessing on it. And so therefore, every Kohen should be very, very careful that he shouldn't put himself at the time of washing his hands to need to have to say the bracha, and should always make sure that his hands are clean the entire time, so he shouldn't enter into any type of issue like this. When the Shliach Tzibur gets to the blessing of Ritzei, all the Kohen in the shul get up from their spot to go up to the Duchan. The Duchan is that spot in front of the Aron where the Sifrei Torah are lying. And if they don't get there in time, until they finish the blessing of Ritzei, that's fine. But if they didn't get up to go do the hand washing and head up to the Duchan at the time, then that's it. They're done. They shouldn't go up at all. Okay, so the Mishnah Berurah explains you have to start moving when the Shliach Tzibur starts it. So what he means is that's what you should do. You should be very careful to start your movement at the moment he says the blessing Ritzei. Ritzei Hashem Elokeinu. Start heading to the hand washing and get the shoes loose, okay? But if you didn't do anything until he already started the blessing, as long as he hasn't finished the blessing, you're still good. Okay, so we also say that all the Kohanim head up. Why? Because the verse says that Aharon lift up his hands to the people and bless them, and afterwards he went to do the actual service on the offering. Okay, which seems to imply that first you do the blessing, and that's how you end the sacrificial service itself. And so that's why the rabbis put it here, because it's in the middle of the section discussing doing the sacrificial service. And that's why you need to get started on it before they actually finish the blessing, referring to the sacrificial service. And so we say you have until he finishes the blessing of Ritzei to get up there. So the Mishnah Berurah explains it's not really accurate description of it, because what it means is that even if you didn't get to your proper spot until they finished the blessing of Modim, that also doesn't matter. Okay, as long as you're heading in the right direction, you've moved your feet to go to Ritzei. Because remember, you're standing and listening to Shemona Esrei, so you got to move your feet to go wash and then head up there. Okay, but since we were talking about Ritzei, we're referring to Ritzei here as well. So the main time the Mishnah Berurah explains to get up and start heading to go ahead and say the bracha is the time when you're ready to go wash your hands, because you're not really ready to go up to the duchen yet. And so therefore you start to move your feet to go wash your hands before you get to Ritzei. So if you're at Ritzei, you're kind of should already be heading up. So before Ritzei, you should really go washing your hands. And then you go back to your spot, and at Ritzei, you head up to the duchen. Now, if you didn't wash your hands before Ritzei, and you still have time to go and wash your hands before he finishes the blessing and then get up there, so even though you started moving at Ritzei, if you have the time and you're heading up there, that's okay. That's fine. Some people even say you can wash your hands while you're up there too. Okay. However, if you didn't, the Shulchan Aruch explains that if you didn't start heading out at Ritzei towards the duchen, then you're toast. And that's even if you did start heading up to it to head out to wash your hands. So some people say that that's not enough. Okay. So even though the washing your hands is acceptable, and it's setting you up to go duchen, you really needed more time, and you're supposed to head up to the duchen at Ritzei, so you should have taken care of washing your hands ahead of time. Okay. However, here you're leaving the shul and then coming back in, and so therefore the custom is that when the shliach tzibur gets to Ritzei, and you haven't gone up to the front of the shul, then you should wait in your spot for where you davened until they come to him. Okay. And so, but really you should try to get out of there to go walk over to the spot where the washing is ahead of time. Okay, so now let's say someone left their house. Okay, they were in the middle of davening and they're coming to shul. I guess they can hear davening at shul. And they find that they got to the spot after Ritzei has already started. So even though the moment when they left to come there from their house next to the shul, it was before this time, that's not considered getting started, and therefore you don't go run up to the duchen, okay? Because you should have left your house faster to get up to the duchen sooner. But if you did leave your house and you were rushing to get over to the duchen, that's going to count, okay? But some people even say that this is only referring to when your house is like right next to shul and you hear that, but not if you just kind of know when it is. Okay? And no matter what it is, no matter what the excuse is, the Mishnah Berurah explains that even if there's some type of issue, you shouldn't go up to daven. Okay, I will finish this last one over here. Okay, when you move your feet, okay? Okay, so when you move your feet, and the Ramah adds over here that according to Rashi, Tosos, and the Ran, they say that you shouldn't say anything until you're ready to get in front of the bima and say it. Okay, they said something there. The Kohanim have made their move to come up to the Duchan, and you should start. This is something you should start to say it. Okay. Okay. You should say Yehira Sam Lefanecha. Shadei Brachazu, right? That this blessing that I'm about to say, that you have commanded me to bless the Jewish people, should be a full-fledged blessing, and there should not be any stumbling block and any sin from now until forever. And they're saying this while the Shliach Tzibor is completing the blessing and modim. Okay. So then the Mishnah Berurah explains this is also our custom, that you don't say it while you're walking up there. You only say it once you reach the Duchan. Okay, and then you say a short little prayer for that. And then we then say over here that you say it until they complete Amen to the end of the blessing. So it doesn't mean, the Mishnah Berurah explains, it doesn't mean that you only say it there. It means that the Shliach Tzibor is about to finish the blessing. He finishes the blessing, and then they're about to say Amen. Okay? And that Amen should succumb to both that blessing and the little prayer that you're saying as well. And so therefore, when you complete your blessing, you should say Amen at the end of the blessing of the Shliach Tzibor. Okay, and this is brought down in the book Shulchan Shlomo. So I apologize we didn't get up to Halacha 10 today. We'll talk more about the actual blessing itself. And I had some technical difficulties, so I apologize. But I look forward to continuing our discussion of the priestly blessing next time. Thank you everyone for coming, and we will see you next week. Oh no, wait, no, we will not see you on this same time next week. We will move the date, but we will see you next week, just not on this same date. We will move it to Monday. I will post the times. Have a wonderful day.